Russell Morris, welcome to Ramble City. Thank you for coming by.
Thanks, Bradley.
How are you today? Other than me sending you this link very late, I was a bit cheeky this morning, wasn't I? But I put on a jacket. I've got a rule that when you talk to a legend, you wear a jacket. So that's why I've dressed up.
That's all right. Well, I've got no trousers on, so it's okay.
Good. That is how we like to roll at Ramble City.
Yeah.
So before we sort of get into the Day of the Dead album, before we kind of dig into that, I want to start with a quick pop quiz. Okay. Do you know how many studio albums you've released? Do you keep a tally in your mind?
No, I don't. One.
How's it? He's working it out. He's counting.
About 13, maybe. Maybe 14
it is. There you go. 14. That's by my count, by the Spotify count anyway. And so for everyone at home, if you bear in mind that Real Thing came out in 69 and 14 so albums later, or I guess 13 before the one we're going to talk about today, I wanted to sort of set the table to talk about something that happened that was new for you in your career where you, and I hope it's fair to say that, you came up with this idea to write blues songs about a gangster from Sydney. And that's kind of like, I know that's 3 albums ago, but how did this come about? And then we'll dig into how that sort of feeds into this album. But tell us about who Sharkjaws is and how you came across this character.
Yeah. Well, what happened, I was taking a long, hard look at myself. I'd been writing songs and I thought I'd produced a couple of really good albums that had sunk without a trace. And I thought, what am I doing here? Why am I missing the mark?
Right.
What is it? So I stood and looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, what do people see when they see me? And then I looked at my songs and I thought, I'm trying to chase the Pied Piper here. I'm trying to be a pop, writing pop songs. And it just doesn't go with the image. And I thought, maybe I'll go back to what I started doing, which was blues and rhythm and blues. And it's probably more befitting of my station in life that I'll do songs. So I started writing some blues songs and I'd probably written about 3 or 4 and I still wasn't engaged in them very well because my favourite artists in the blues genre are John Lee Hooker and Howling Wolf, and I was probably trying to emulate
traditional
them.
stuff that feels very authentic, very real, one take kind of vibe, it's like authentic for people that don't know those guys.
And I was trying to do that. And it was more the subject matter that I was writing about. And then I was in Sydney and I saw a newspaper article about Thomas Archer, and it was his photograph, his police photograph from 1916, and it just transfixed me. I thought it was a wonderful photograph. So I took it home, and one rainy afternoon in Melbourne, I was sitting there and I was looking at the photograph and I thought, I'll write a song about this guy because he's so intriguing. Soon as I wrote the song, it was almost like I was Howard Carter, who had just opened up Tutankhamun's tomb, and when he was looking in, shining a torch in, and someone from behind him said, "What do you see?" And he said, "Beautiful things." And that's what I saw. As soon as I wrote the song about him, I thought, that's why I'm not getting the songs right. I'm trying to write about subjects that are in Mississippi and New Orleans. I'm not American. My roots aren't American. I've got to write blues and roots songs about my roots that matter to me and matter to the people that I know and all my ancestors. I've got to be honest to my ancestors, not to someone else's ancestors. So I wrote from that point of view, and that's how that happened.
That's an incredible story, Russell. Thanks for sharing that because, when I was kind of doing my research as I like to do, I saw that in the 70s, you went to London to plan to make a record, and then, that didn't necessarily go the way that you'd expected, as often is in the business, and then you went to New York and did that there, and then eventually came back and continued in Australia, being kind of one of our historical heroes, I guess, in my mind as a music fan, as a music lover and loving history, And it's interesting to say that somewhere, again, along the line, you went, well, this is kind of what I do and this is part of who I am, but still paying tribute to that sound because it sounds authentic. I'm a blues man. Like, it still feels like the blues, but it just feels like you're talking about people from down under.
Yeah, well, it's Australian blues. Like in the past, I think there'd been a couple of blues songs about, I think Chris Wilson did a couple of historical blues songs, but never a whole album. And usually in the past, the songs about Australia were well, he came down from Narnagoon with a banjo on his back, and he went from that sort of stuff. And I thought, I'm not particularly into that sort of music. And oddly enough, which is odd, I was nominated for a golden guitar, but a couple of people in Tamworth got their noses right out of joint and started and threatened to quit the CM Country Music Board if I went through as the nomination. And someone said, but he's been nominated by 600 people who we vote with. And they said, no, it's not going to happen. And what they failed to realise that country and blues were sleeping in the same bed very early on. If you listen to Leadbelly's songs, Leadbelly was like one of the kings of blues, but one of his songs is Good Night, Irene, Good Night, Good Night, Irene. One of the biggest country songs of all time. And a lot of those blues guys did that. They would cross over, and it was like that. And then all of a sudden the Cowboys came along. Gene Autry and all those. It was home on the range, and then they just went in completely different
look
directions.
At Ray Charles, right? This is the guy that plays soul and rhythm and blues at the height and the beginning of that, that part of that sound. And he's like, here comes a country hit. Here's I can't stop loving you.
Exactly right. But people here refuse to take that into account. They thought the blues was like the devil's music. The country people here, I was the devil. I was bringing up the devil.
It's interesting too, because something I was going to say and ask you about is the blues has always been in your music. From an outsider. Well, in the roots of it, though, in the heart of it. And I mean, that just speaks to that is the heart of pop music and rock music, like you're saying. It's blues, it's gospel, it's country, it's,
But it's even more there than you realise. One of my favourite bands played on Sweet, Sweet Love, which you could probably look at as a very schmaltzy pop song. But the band that played on that was Chain, one of my favourite bands, and they were my friends because I loved them. They were blues, and I said, will you play on? And they played that song. So it was a total blues band that played Sweet, Sweet Love.
This is like a study on its own, isn't it? Of kind of pulling off that Tupperware lid into the history of sort of saying, these guys play this, but it's like the big jazz cats of the 70s and 80s that are playing on all these like 70s AM hits. 70s AM hits that are like these insane jazz cats that are, just, playing super out there stuff in their free time and then winding it back just for the session, It's incredible.
That's right, exactly.
Okay, well, let's get back to the story then about Sharkmouth, your album that sort of started this concept kind of project, if I can call it that. We're going to dig into what you're going to call it later. But so you wrote these songs and then you started shopping them around, and you already said then that you were kind of in this process of working out what it is maybe that hadn't been hitting the mark. What happened when you started shopping the songs around?
Everyone hated it.
Right.
Everyone hated it. People were saying, why would you do a blues album? No one likes the blues, and it's about Australian history. No one's
three
really
things
interested.
We hate, Russell. What are you doing? It's
It's unbelievable. And I said, I don't care. I said, I just wanted to do it. I said, I don't care. I'll release it myself. Because some of the big record companies all passed on it. And I pressed 500 copies just to sell at shows. And Robert Rigby from Ambition Records heard it, and he said, listen, we'll run with it. And it sort of was slow to take off, and then all of a sudden it just went through the roof. And, it sold truckloads of records.